Welcome back to part three of Breaking the Pain Cycle, Mind Body Tools to Transform Chronic Pain. I'm Laura Haraka, a somatic experiencing practitioner, breathwork facilitator, and mind body coach. I hope you've had a good experience practicing catch, challenge, and change. So let's move on. And you're probably saying, Laura, you've made your point that thoughts and emotions affect the body. But I had a real injury. I hurt my back in 1985 and I still have pain. Well, you're right. When we experience a physical injury, there is acute tissue damage. And during that time, the brain creates pain pathways to protect us. But here's the thing, even after the tissue damage has healed, the brain doesn't just erase those pathways. Pain is not only about the body, it's also about the brain. So think about these pathways like muscles. The more we use them, the stronger they get. If you sing often, your singing ability probably improves. Why? Because you're reinforcing that brain pathway. It's the same thing with pain. Neurons that fire together wire together. And if pain continues, especially when it's reinforced by fear, worry, or focus, it gets wired. So over time, the brain becomes hypersensitive. It starts sounding the alarm even when there's no danger, like a police dog trained to sniff out tiny traces of a scent. The brain becomes trained to overreact to normal sensations. But the good news is, just like we can train the brain into pain, we can also train it out of pain. We can desensitize the nervous system and create new, safer pathways. So if you hurt your back bending down to tie your shoe, gradually your back heals. But after several months, every time you bend over, you still feel that familiar sense of tightness or pain. Why? Because the brain lived the experience of pain bending and predicts the pain will occur again long after it has healed. It becomes conditioned. Our brains create our reality. So I want you to close your eyes and I want you to envision the word sunflower. It can be any size of letters, any color of letters, any font, cursive, uppercase, whatever you'd like them to be. Just notice the word in your head, in your mind, with your eyes closed. And I want you to repeat to yourself the word sunflower and repeat it a few times. Now I'm going to invite you to open your eyes back up. Now I'm assuming most of you could actually see the word. So your brain created the image of the color of the words, the size of the word, not your eyes. And your brain created the sound of your voice that you heard, not your ears. Your brain might have even created an image of an actual sunflower. So all sensations are created by the brain, and the brain's number one job is to keep us safe. So when it perceives something is dangerous, it sends out signals like pain, tension, or anxiety, even when the actual danger is no longer there. That's why a huge part of healing is learning how to send the brain messages of safety and to gently retrain those responses by lowering the fear. So let me give you an example. Imagine you order a Coke at a restaurant, but the waitress accidentally brings you an iced tea. You take a sip, and even if the iced tea is perfectly fine, your brain was expecting something fizzy. So it might register the iced tea as gross or wrong, even though there's nothing actually wrong with it. This is what happens in chronic pain. The brain expects danger or pain, even when the body is safe. And just like with the iced tea, your experience is real, even if the brain's reaction is based on old information. But the good news is That expectation can be rewired. When we start giving the brain new experiences and messages of safety over time, it begins to respond differently, calmer, more accurately, and with less pain. So, the main job of our brain is to keep us safe. So, one way the brain does this is to keep us safe from danger is pain. So, we want pain in our lives. Pain actually helps us so we don't injure ourselves. For example, if we touch a hot stove, we want pain so we don't continue to get burned. Or if we break a bone, we want pain so we don't injure it more. Now, there was a study done by medical students from Texas who wanted to trick the brain into feeling pain. They did a study where they hooked up electrodes from a machine to the participants' head, and they were told it would send an electrical current through their heads to cause a headache. And the name of the machine was the shock generator. It made loud sounds, but the machine literally did nothing. The participants all felt pain. The brain actually made a mistake. If you toss if I tossed you a baseball and your brain thought it was a hand grenade, you would respond as if it was dangerous. And if the brain thinks something is dangerous, it amplifies the sensation. So, what do I mean by that? The best example I can give you is my mom. My mom wears a hearing aid. And let's say I'm speaking at a 2 out of 10 volume. If she turns it up, she can now hear me at a 7 out of 10 volume. However, I'm still speaking at a 2. So basically, the volume knob in your brain is turned up because your brain perceives the pain as dangerous. So if the brain thinks something is dangerous, it will send pain. So imagine there's a pain dial in your brain, like a volume knob. The limbic system sends messages to this knob. So when we are stressed and anxious and fearful, the volume knob gets turned up and we experience more pain. And when we release our stress, the dial goes down and our pain can become less. It's all about how our brain perceives danger and pain. So, one question that I asked myself during this journey is if I was my brain, would I feel safe right now? So, I don't know all of you that are listening, obviously, and how awesome you are. So I'm going to ask you to finish the sentence. I am awesome because. And I'd like you to pause the recording and write down all the reasons you're awesome. And then I want you to close your eyes and read the list to yourself, remembering what you wrote down. Maybe I'm awesome because I'm a good mom. I'm awesome because I'm a good listener. I'm awesome because I make good soup. I'm awesome because I'm a good friend. And notice what you feel in your body now. As I've said that, and you replaying the list in your head. And hopefully it feels lighter, easier, more relaxed, calm, and the breath comes in. So, one simple strategy to affect pain in your body is just to change your thoughts. So, our brain gets sensitive to pain over time. So, we need to desensitize the brain. So, think about it if you were in a dark room. If we just turn the light on, it's absolutely startling to our eyes. But if we turn it on gradually, our eyes adjust over time. It's the same thing with the pain and the brain. We can reprogram our brain that we are safe over time. So, how do we do this? Graded exposure. We show our brain slowly that we are safe or the activity is safe. For example, if you learned a language in school, such as Spanish, and then went on to college to continue studying the language, you went abroad to Spain and immersed yourself with the people and speaking the language, and you become pretty fluent. You now come home from Spain. Do you know the language? Well, of course you do. Now let's say 10, 15 years go by and you don't practice. You don't know anyone that speaks Spanish to even practice. Do you know the language? Probably not, because without practice and repetition, that neural pathway weakens. It's the same thing with pain. You can unlearn the pain. You can develop new circuits in your brain by learning knowledge, getting instruction, and paying attention, and repeating the skill over and over again. So, learning is making new connections, and instruction is teaching the body how to in order to create a new experience. And paying attention is necessary to rewire the brain because it involves you being present physically and mentally. Repetition wires and fires long-term relationships between nerve cells. And by doing this, the old pain pathways become weaker. I did this by dancing. So, did you ever hear of someone or yourself doing a simple movement, like reaching for a plate, and you threw your back out? It was that moment that everything in life became too much, the straw that broke the camel's back. So imagine a bucket filled with grief, anger, sadness, stress, worry, and negative thinking. It hits maximum capacity and threatens to overflow. Without a release valve, sometimes an emotion can become too strong. It's like a tea kettle. Things build up, and eventually it explodes. Things need to be felt and processed, or it will show up as pain. Think about holding on to a secret you really want to share but can't. It actually can hurt in the body. And when we're not processing our emotions in our energy body, it gets stuck in our physical body. So come back for part 3 to learn how to take our bodies and our minds back.